All right, and we have a great political panel to break all of this down. I'm going to start with MS Now White House reporter Jake Traylor, who is traveling with the president, MS Now political director Shawna Thomas, MS Now senior Washington reporter and co-host of The Weekend, Eugene Daniels, and former senior advisor to Vice President Kamala Harris, Democratic strategist Mike Nellis. Good to see all of you guys this morning. Jake, I'm going to start with you. You've been traveling with the president. What is awaiting him in Michigan today?
Yeah, look, what's awaiting him are increasingly candidates who are given permission from Trump's top aides and allies, midterm strategists, saying, hey, it's actually okay for you to distance yourself from the president's messaging on Iran, on the economy. These are key issues that normally a Trump that we're used to over the past decade, if someone does not lock in step with him, he's primarying them, he's attacking them on Truth Social. We're seeing a different side of the coin here where Republican strategists are coming to reckon with the fact that the president is so underwater right now, it would actually be okay for some of these Republican candidates across swing states like Michigan, where we are today, to actually have some room, some distance between themselves and President Trump. When we look at who's going to be here today, Representative Tom Barrett, someone that Trump has endorsed, he voted twice this summer to limit Trump's war powers. The Senate candidate, Mike Rogers, who also Trump has endorsed. This is someone who has been vocal about criticism against some of Trump's policies about having Chinese manufacturing in the United States here. So what's partially happening is a reckoning of sorts of political operatives saying the most strategic thing we can do here is actually allow some separation to exist. And that's even manifesting in the way we talked to some Republican operatives who told us they are not going to Trump like they normally would and telling the president that normally when a candidate goes against him, they come to the president, they tell him about this, he goes out on Truth Social and attacks them. This time around, they're kind of letting those things slide and trying to keep the president's focus on messaging of his own, not mixing with the candidates like normal.
Mike, how long do you think this longer leash could last? And if it does, in fact, last, and Republicans are able to adjust their messaging, be a little bit more in opposition to the president, is that going to have to change the game that Democrats play for these midterms?
No, I'd give it till the end of the day. I don't think Donald Trump has the type of discipline to let people get beyond his MAGA movement. He's made it very clear the Republican Party is his party. If you speak out against him, he's going to have you primaried and removed, like he did with Thomas Massie over the war in Iran and the Epstein files cover up. I think that White House aides can say whatever they want in public, behind the scenes, two candidates, whatever. Donald Trump is going to undermine every bit of that. And you already saw it earlier today because the Senate Republicans put out a video this morning talking about how they have to protect Donald Trump's Senate majority. That's not the way you talk when you are putting together an opportunity for your candidates to create distance from an unpopular president. Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama, actual good political leaders understood that. Donald Trump is too vain to let his candidates get away with that.
Eugene, I'm curious what you're going to be watching for as the president is in Michigan. But then we also have all of this Democratic infighting taking place in their key Senate race right now. And what risk you see for the Democrats here of them losing an opportunity to sort of prosecute their case against this president and all the Republicans down ballot from him and kind of getting caught up in their own internal divisions over progressivism, centrism, and party personalities?
On Trump in Michigan, I want to see how long he's able to stay on message and talk about the candidates that he's there for, talking about winning in Michigan, whether it be the Senate or these House races. How long he's able to do that is always a key tell to how much he actually cares about something. I imagine that he's mostly going to talk about the Save America Act. I imagine that he's mostly going to talk about, his lies about the election being stolen in 2020. He talked about Michigan in his speech. I guess that could have been last week, could have been a year ago at this point, based on how time is moving nowadays. But when it comes to Democrats, what's so interesting is, and what folks should remember, is that this is a seat they have to hold on to because this is a Democratic seat. This is not an opportunity for them to pick up like in Alaska where they're feeling good, like in Ohio, like in Iowa. This is somewhere they have to actually win. And I think what I've heard from folks on the ground is that Haley Stevens is kind of having this moment, right? A lot of it's happening online. It's hard to see how much of that is working on the ground. But her biggest bet is going to be with Black voters, right? Black voters, as we say all the time, more pragmatic, a little bit more moderate. But the question for Abdul El Sayed is he able both in this primary and if he wins in November, going to be able to galvanize people in a way to overcome any losses from the moderates maybe staying home for a Senate race like this. And I think the thing that's interesting about Democrats is they always are having these kinds of beefs, right? It's always a back and forth. They're always fighting between the progressivism or a moderate streak that they want to have. And I think, honestly, a lot of it is kind of overblown. The idea that the Democratic Socialists of America have taken over the Democratic Party is just not true. They have 100,000 members countrywide. Like, it's just not true. And so if Democrats do get bogged down in answering to Republican attacks about the DSA taking over the party, they are going to be distracted. But I don't think the leadership of the party is doing that. What we just saw from Hakeem Jeffries, what you're seeing from people like Kirsten Gillibrand, who heads up the Democratic Senate campaign arm, they seem kind of focused on those things. I think the fight is happening below, but I think that fight is much more important for 2028.
Yeah, I mean, not only the fact that, in fact, DSA is more limited in terms of just the number of candidates that are actually out there and have been put forward than I think people believe, or maybe the Republicans want people to believe. But also, in the case of Michigan, Abdul El-Sayed is actually not a DSA candidate. He does not identify as a socialist at all. And that is not to say that Republicans won't try to use that label anyway, but he has been more than clear about that in numerous interviews. Shawna, I want your thoughts on the dynamics here and how realistic the path ahead is for Democrats, whether it's in Michigan or any of these other key swing states, and pickup attempts that they're trying to make here. Because one of the challenges you always have with this president, he is not on the ballot, but he and his movement are often able to defy gravity. And yet at the same time, the polls are all pretty terrible for him. I mean, if you look at the recent polling, YouGov and CBS, his approval at 39%, a Fox News poll, 39%, Emerson poll, 39%. Not good.
No, not good. And it's probably the best weapon that the Democrats have, especially in their attempt to take over the Senate. You have a couple of races that look like they are going very well for the Democrats. In Georgia, you have Jon Ossoff, whose latest polling shows that he is up slightly. And he also has $40 million in the bank, according to his latest FEC poll. Now, that is a hold, but that is a seat that the Democrats must hold if they want to take over control of the Senate. And I think it's interesting. That $40 million in the bank is more than the DNC has, which is one of the issues that the Democrats have when it comes to actually doing this, is that, as you've already said, and the reporting has shown, the DNC is actually in the hole. So their ability to dole out money and help candidates like, let's say, Troy Jackson in Maine, who is starting almost from zero, though we did have reporting this morning that in the 24 hours since he officially became the candidate, he's raised $2 million. But where he has to look around for other people, other organizations to bolster him when he is running. And the DNC may not be that helpful in that case. But overall, going back to sort of the Trump numbers, that's the biggest thing that they have, the Democrats have when it comes to the general election, that the president is underwater. The other thing that came out in a Fox News poll, actually, is that Democrats seem more enthusiastic to go out and vote than Republicans currently. Now, we are going to keep watching the polling that comes in and looking for that number over and over again. But that enthusiasm to actually get up or send in their ballot, mail in their ballot, go to early voting when we get to the general election, that tells you a lot about the direction this is going in. Now, some of this doesn't really apply for the House races. Everyone is interested in seeing if the House flips as well. But the redistricting that the Republicans did in a lot of these states makes those House races a lot harder in some of those places where the Democrats would like to pick up seats. That being said, in those states where they redistricted, let's say Texas, for example, right? Now, the Texans, the Republicans are going to win in a lot of those House races, but we're all looking at Tallarico trying to figure out, can he pull this out? Is Texas really going to be the thing that tips the edge this time? I'm from Texas. I have some doubts, but okay. But that energy behind people being pissed off about the redistricting, that is something Tallarico could use from a Senate perspective.
Mike, Shawna mentioned some of the chaos going over there at the DNC, and I have to ask you about it and just how significant it is that the DNC is dead. There are all these allegations around Ken Martin and his management style, him even taking to issuing NDAs right now. How much of a problem will problems at the DNC be? Because Shauna mentioned, for example, someone like Troy Jackson in Maine, who isn't going to be able to get these resources as he has this tight, compressed timeline. At the same time, someone like Troy Jackson in Maine might say, I actually don't want to be walking in lockstep with the DNC anyway right now.
Yeah. I don't think this changes the makeup of the midterms very much. Don't get me wrong. The DNC is an important organization. There are a lot of really incredibly hardworking, creative people that work there, particularly in their digital team, which I think does excellent work. But the DNC's job is really to handle the nominating contest in 2028 for the presidential contenders. Obviously, they do other things as well, but the Democratic Party is much larger than just the DNC. I actually think they sometimes get used like a scapegoat for every problem in the party, but there are lots of other party committees, including the DSCC, the DCCC. They are well funded. Our individual candidates are well funded. Troy Jackson's raised $2 million, mostly from small dollar grassroots donors over the last 24 or 48 hour period since he got the nomination officially. I think you're going to see a lot of that. So yes, the Republicans have a ton of money. Yes, you would rather not be having this type of drama. You don't want to be talking about this stuff 100 days out, but I don't think it changes very much. At the end of the day, the average person is sitting at home. They don't care about the drama in the GOP or in the Democratic Party. They care about their pocketbooks. Can they afford to pay their bills? Are their kids going to be sent off to war? I think people are pretty frustrated with that. Gas prices. I think it's going to be more focused on that than anything else.